Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Nuance Needed podcast. I'm Amanda.
And this is Sam.
And last week, we sort of did a part one of my chronic pain story, which is very long. And I ended up going into details that kind of set the scene, probably more details than I thought I was going to go into, which ended up being a really great episode. But if anyone has birth trauma or didn't want to listen to that, rightly so, but is interested in the chronic pain half of this, let me give you a quick overview and then we're going to dive right in. If you want to hear the whole episode, obviously go listen to that. So basically last week what I talked about was how my chronic pain started because I had a hard pregnancy. I didn't move a ton during my pregnancy. I stopped exercising and using my body for basically, 2 years by the point that I started getting help. And then I spent almost a year just trying to reconnect with muscles that I hadn't used and I wasn't able to turn on. Yeah, we're gonna dig into what happened next. So this puts us, Sam, a year ago. We were just talking about how I was struggling to do really basic ab and core exercises.
Yeah.
2 years ago. And 2 years, wait, you moved last October.
Yep.
Was last year when I couldn't go to Beyonce because I was in so much pain? I think so.
It was a year ago. I saw Beyonce on the 14th of July last year.
My gosh. Almost a year. Exactly. And this was actually part of why I wanted to talk about it because I'm like, I'm so grateful that I can travel and move and do things.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's wild when you're out of it how you forget how bad it was for so long. Yeah. So I ended up with really bad chronic pain in my shoulder. I found out that I had 2 discs that were bulging in my neck. And I basically became obsessed with trying to figure out what happened because at this point, I knew that I hadn't worked these muscles. I knew that was what caused the poor posture, which caused some of the breakdowns. I knew that my body had been coping by using my back and my hip flexors and even just your shoulders to stabilize, which I didn't realize was something that you needed to do. But then I think what was so hard last year was I felt like I had figured things out. I had just started reconnecting with muscles and using them properly. And I still was left with all of this chronic pain that made me so hopeless. And I researched a ton trying to figure out what's wrong, essentially. I thought for a while that I maybe had thoracic outlet syndrome. I started getting a lot of nerve pain in my hands, basically. And some of my joints started randomly swelling up, which was very confusing as well. So yeah, I just felt hopeless. I kept trying to do this thing with my husband where it was also so much harder a year ago, the difference between 2 and 3 of them being able to stand and get in and out of a car seat and move and all of that stuff is just so huge. And I just felt so stuck with every time I would my husband and I would do this thing where we're okay, we're going to take 6 weeks and I am going to not pick up Peyton for 6 weeks and we will just shadow each other the whole time and then I'll be better. And I kept trying to take these breaks and it just wouldn't work. And it was so demoralizing because I also felt like I wasn't a good parent during that time because I couldn't be present with her because I was in so much pain and I felt so hopeless. And I really think that isn't I learned so much about my own capacity and how much, I never experienced chronic pain before of how much it just takes up so much real estate in your brain when you're in pain. And it was obviously I'm in recovery, so I wasn't seeking, opiates or anything like that. But it was very clear to me of how desperate I was at times that I was just oh my God, I completely understand why people turn to opiates because you just don't know what to do and you feel hopeless. And then I got to this like really frustrating point basically where I became really scared of moving because I was terrified of making it worse. So I became like really hyper vigilant basically around my movement. And I was constantly trying to check to see if I was making it worse and what I could do. And I also became so obsessed with like trying to cure it that I became pretty obsessed with getting massages, dry needling. I was in PT, which never was like too much, but I became really obsessed with trying to find like rolling, like taking a lacrosse ball and rolling myself. I bought like every contraption that existed I thought my psoas was bad and I wanted to get adjusted all the time. And I literally, it got so bad that basically my PT and I had to have a conversation and she had to very nicely explain that some of what I was doing was like making it worse. And I got stuck in this like addictive pattern basically of being so desperate to feel better. I would do more and more extreme things to try to feel better. And then it would make my body worse. And basically what I had to figure out, which I only figured out through, I had to just stop getting massages. I still don't let myself really get massages anymore, which is so sad because we've talked about how much we love a good hard massage. But basically it was like, I would have a rebound effect where I would be like worse afterwards. But while I was doing it all day long and I was overstretching so much because I like to stretch in general. And then I would overstretch to try to, again, I felt so tight, I would overstretch. And what I ended up discovering through all of this is that I am hypermobile. And I had no idea. No one told me this. I just assumed, I knew I was like flexible, but I didn't think I was hypermobile. But thankfully, I have, again, this amazing pelvic floor PT who ended up being able to put the pieces together very slowly and figure out that I'm hypermobile. And that was why my joints were randomly swelling. Because if you're hypermobile, you are like in general, your body needs you to be like a little more tense in your muscles to stabilize you. So it makes a lot of sense that all of the rolling and massages and dry needling and everything, muscle relaxants, everything I was trying to do to loosen myself up was creating this rebound effect where my body would freak out and then cause more pain and swelling. And then I would get more hypervigilant and more scared and move less and stretch and release more. So I wasn't building muscle and I was just overstretching. So that took like a long time to figure out and really believe and start taking action on. And I started doing that. And then I still had this chronic neck pain, which really scared me and was really hard to deal with. And what I ended up discovering that I didn't know a lot about pain and how pain registers in the body. And I'm interested, Sam, in like what you know. But basically, what I read this book called The Way Out, which I highly recommend if you have chronic pain. And basically, it was at the recommendation of my PT who specializes in a lot of pain also. And she said that what can happen sometimes with chronic pain is that it is sort of like trauma in your body where your body thinks it's being helpful. And I think this is part of the debate over the body keeps the score is, right, everything is in your brain. Even pain is not really like you get a signal from your body, but your brain is what decides to make the pain. And I think we think a lot that it's coming from the thing and that it's like your finger, right, that is in pain and it knows because it's sending you pain. But really, your brain is always deciphering what's going on. And what's even wilder is your brain can predict pain a lot of times too. So if you've ever listened to the episodes I've done about emotions, or even like we get into it in the evolution of emotions emotions are predictions. Your brain is predicting how you're going to feel. The same happens physically, and your brain can get into habits of predicting, just like we talk about, there's a common thing with neuroscience and trauma work where we say neurons that wire together. The same happens with physical pain. And what I discovered is basically my body, especially since it'd been multiple years, was so afraid of pain, so afraid of movement. A lot of my pain ended up being, there wasn't even a physical cause to it anymore. It was just like my back was so used to overworking, it would produce pain or things like that. And it was really hard to accept and sounds pretty woo-woo for sort of who I am. Mm-hmm. But once I started connecting it to trauma of, like just like you can have a flashback and not be in the situation, or you can experience emotional pain about something that isn't happening right now, it makes sense to me that you could experience physical pain even if it's not happening right now. So a lot of the work I did, I worked with someone who does, it's called pain reprocessing therapy, where it's kind of like EMDR, where you kind of allow yourself to be in pain and then train your response to it to be different. It's called somatic tracking. And you kind of are mindful and you stay calm and you try not to label it as good or bad. And you sort of like slowly titrate yourself to the pain, just like you slowly titrate yourself to the emotional pain in EMDR. And that completely changed my life, along with the modifications that I did with not overstretching, and things like that, which was pretty miraculous, and seems really woo-woo. But and it took a lot of time. Like I said, it's like taken probably a year of getting through it. And then I still sometimes will have flares, and I have to stay calm. I have to believe that I didn't do something. Like for a long time, I would feel better, and then I would go on a trip, or I would carry something that was too heavy, or I would do something that did cause some pain. And then I would tense up and I would get so scared of the pain that then it would like be this reinforcing cycle where things would get worse. So I've had to do a lot of work on staying calm, mindfulness training. I have had to learn that I can get through things even if I'm in a flare for a while. And that has kind of been the biggest thing that's made a huge difference.
I remember in the emergency room, we would have people coming in with like, obviously chronic issues. And now there's like, I think what I want to introduce here too is, for any of you listening, if you have dealt with chronic pain or at any point experienced pain that was chronic for whatever reason, there's a spectrum here, right? We're not saying like pain related to like cancer treatment or, any of these like definitive things is something that you just need to have a better mindset and you'll be fine.
Yes.
However, just like there is a spectrum with that, there is a spectrum on the other end that I have found people now are so fearful of discomfort. Mm-hmm. They are so fearful of what discomfort means. There is an assumption that everything must mean something. Mm-hmm. And something that I will tell some of my clients or people I've worked with in the past who have like health anxiety is I will say like, sometimes your body is just a body.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a cramp. Sometimes you pull something. Sometimes something feels tight because you used it in a weird way. And when we latch onto that and cling to that, is exactly as you said, your brain goes over the handlebars with it in trying to, what does it do? Keep you safe.
Yep.
And it starts desperately looking for something that alleviates the problem, where if we just allowed ourselves to exist with it, which again, this is easier said than done. Like for you, this was quite a monumental effort. I remember how horrific your pain was, and we talked about it the whole
if you want to hear
journey.
A year ago, I literally am crying to Sam a year ago on Substack about it.
Because it was so bad. I felt awful, and there's nothing you can do. But the other thing that I learned, the reason I brought that up is because the other thing that I learned in the emergency room when it comes to pain management, and really this goes all the way back to the rise of the opiate crisis in the 90s, is pain is subjective.
Yes.
Pain is extremely subjective. And one thing that is painful for somebody might not be painful for somebody else.
Yep.
And one person's experience might not be the other's, and vice versa. And so what doctors really clung to was these miracle meds that made all pain go away.
Yep.
And they didn't have to worry anymore about assessing what someone felt or didn't feel, or what caused it, or when. They didn't have to waste time with a holistic approach.
Yep.
They were able to just assign this drug, and everybody's pain was better.
Yeah.
And even now in medicine, physicians struggle with holding space for pain is subjective. But now they're so afraid of opiates that they almost don't prescribe anything.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is where it gets complicated too.
Yeah.
So, and if you ask for it, that's where sometimes they'll start to be like, what do you mean? Why do you want, why do you want fentanyl? You know? Now the other interesting thing is if you came in as a trauma, you automatically got fentanyl, understandably so.
Yep.
But for patients just in the ER, a lot of times it was like they would give you like high-powered ibuprofen.
Yep.
And so it was an interesting experience to have the exposure to that. But the other thing that I find interesting about the opiate crisis, and I promise I'm going to tie this back to you. I'm not just like going off on a tangent here. But the opiate crisis started in the Appalachian region because of coal mining accidents and incidents.
Yep.
And initially it would help men continue to go back to work. They didn't have to be chronically injured, on medical leave, and unemployed. They could go back to work.
Right.
But the other thing that matched with the increase of opiate prescriptions was the decrease of local community doctors.
Right.
That knew people over the course of their life, knew intimately their medical histories, and could decipher like, oh, you're probably fine, or oh, this is a bigger issue, or oh, we've seen you get through this before and it felt like this, so that'll probably feel like that, right? So you had this like supply-demand graph essentially get totally off kilter. And these generic doctors coming in and just prescribing everybody everything, and it collapsed entire communities. And so...
And then pharmaceutical companies trying to make money and hit quotas, and pharmaceutical reps being told that this is a miracle and that it's not addictive.
Not addictive. Yeah. It just makes you feel
great.
So the reason I bring all that up is because I think it was this whole process. And like I mentioned this at the end of like part 1 in the last episode, but I think the way you approached this was just so insanely brave and so aware and involved. And you took into account your addiction history, and you knew like the answers were there. Yeah. The very easy, low-hanging fruit answers were there for you, and they would have given it to you. And I think for you to like really sit in this and say like, no, I'm going to heal. Like I'm going to actually nurture myself and care for myself. And I think you leaned into a process that so many of us are afraid of. Because I think this journey absolutely mimics emotional journeys as well. Of people are just like grasping for simple, straightforward solutions that make it all better. And
I think I got to the point too where I was just like, this isn't like, I had to spend a lot of time trying things that didn't work.
Right.
Like I only was open to, and it's actually very funny because I wish I knew who sent it to me. I've tried to like look through my DMs because someone recommended this book. That's how I found it.
Oh, wow.
And if you're listening, thank you. Like I can't find her in my DMs on Instagram anymore. But truly, like I wouldn't have been open to this. And I think it makes it like, I think it's interesting with what we talked about in the last episode too, because I was so dismissed by doctors, it made me very like I wouldn't listen to like when people were just like, it's fine. I didn't listen to answers, which was good in some ways, but it also made me hyper, like I didn't trust myself to understand what was happening in my body because I was like, I was in liver failure and I didn't, during labor, and I didn't know. I couldn't advocate for myself. So I need to be really in tune and really make sure I'm listening. And I don't trust my body to send me the appropriate signals. So it did cause this interesting rebound effect where I was like overly really monitoring myself and overly hypervigilant about my body, which then had like some negative side effects as well. And I feel like I've been able to find the middle through this journey for sure. But yeah, it's just like interesting how you can kind of overcorrect in both directions, essentially.
Yeah. It is officially summer, and I have an incredibly controversial opinion, which is I actually don't love summer. There are elements of summer that I enjoy. There are elements of summer that I like. I don't like summer, and that is because I would rather be cold than hot all the time. There's nothing worse to me than being hot. And sleeping hot is even worse. And since I am a solution-focused person, I am constantly thinking of what I can do to alleviate this problem, make it better for me, because it is so uncomfortable for me to be hot when I sleep. And one of the solutions that I have found is twofold. It is the Cozy Earth bamboo sheet set and the Cozy Earth bamboo pajamas. When I tell you that these things have changed my life and made summer heat in the summer season that much more enjoyable, I cannot speak more highly to it. The material is so breathable. It is so comfortable. It feels like you are wrapped in a cloud while feeling like you are remaining cool at the same time. I don't know how to describe it. You're just going to have to try it. Truly, they are incredible. And one of the things that I absolutely love about this brand is that their clothing carries a lifetime warranty. Any piece of clothing that you buy, lifetime warranty. You can return it anytime, get a replacement. Their bedding has a 10-year warranty. 10 years on your bedding. That is crazy, and it just speaks to how much they trust the quality of their product. Treat yourself to the cool, easy comfort your summer nights have been missing. Head to CozyEarth.com and use my code NUANCEBOGO, that's NUANCEBOGO, to buy one, get one free. Did you hear me? They are doing buy one, get one free right now. Mix and match across sheets, pajamas, and towels. That's code NUANCEBOGO, NUANCEBOGO at CozyEarth.com for buy one, get one free. And if you see a post-purchase survey, please feel free to mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here. And I think it just goes to like, and this is something I've been really thinking of and trying to figure out even like how to get across in like my social media content as well. And what I'm seeing in so much of my work is I feel like we've been running around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to understand the human experience and why people end up where they end up. And, you know, once we're in a problem, how do we fix it? Right. This immediate like solution. And I think what I've realized is nobody, and this is going to sound woo-woo for a second, so come on the journey with me. Nobody knows themselves. Nobody, very, very, very few people have taken the time to understand who they are as a person, their interests, their experiences, what even are their needs, right? This, if you want to look at it as like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? There's this whole pyramid, and you have to know yourself in order to know how to regulate. And then you have to know how to regulate in order to know how to advocate for yourself and speak for yourself. You have to know how to advocate for yourself before you can know how to protect yourself and like what your boundaries are. And then you have to know those things in order to trust yourself to do those things.
Oh, Sam, that's so good. You should make that. You should put that on social media. That's so good.
Am I turning that into a coaching program? I don't know.
That's really good.
I might be. But I think that as I've been sitting here kind of like, how would I bring together my 12 years of work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think even hearing you say all of this of like, I had to listen to myself. Like you had to know yourself to understand what the problem was and then have a grounded confidence in that.
I also think you have to fail to do it too, though. Like, I had to overcorrect in different areas to get back to baseline in the middle. And I think so often we do one or two things that fail and then we say, well, there's no point. And then we kind of like stop trying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so, this like layer, I think is what so many people miss out on. And we've tried, and I blame our industry for this. I do. I think we've tried to get people to those top tiers before they even have this bottom one of even knowing themselves figured out. Boundaries are going to feel impossible if you don't even know what you're trying to protect.
Yeah.
Like if you don't care about a friend canceling on you, you don't care about having the boundary of like, I need you to show up on time.
Yep.
If you're not worried
and
about
that's why it's
like,
so personal.
Right. But then I think people try to take these like one size fits all blanket statements because exactly as you said, they are terrified of getting it wrong.
Yeah.
And they're terrified of having to try again. Because if you don't have a grounded understanding of yourself as a person, you're going to feel like you're grasping at straws.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you were able to keep on it, because you did do so much work to understand yourself and you were willing to be like, okay, I'm going to try this. It didn't work. I'm going to trust that there is an answer. And I'm proud of myself for trying this, and I'm going to move on to the next thing. And you opened yourself up to the woo-woo, which for you was a big deal.
Well, this is once I understood the neuroscience of it, that really changed it for me. Like it's a specific type of pain. It's called neuroplastic pain I know we were kind of saying, we know this doesn't apply. So I thought this could be helpful to list so people know kind of what we're talking about. Inconsistency, pain that moves around the body, changes intensity, or disappears completely when you're distracted, happy, or relaxed. The changing was a big one for me. It was in my neck. It was in my shoulders. It was in my hips. It was in my glutes. Not really my glutes, my lower back. Like one big nail in the coffin for me that made me really believe it is when I started using my glutes again, I started getting pain in my hips and my glutes. And I was like, this is soreness. This is not pain. This is not
that's
pain.
So good.
Isn't that so good? And then that really made me be like, oh, you're sending me the wrong signal. You're interpreting, right? Like my brain isn't wrong. It's just misinterpreting this based on my pain history.
Right.
The same thing happens to me sometimes with my shoulders. Is my shoulders are sore now because I'm still working on rebuilding strength there. And sometimes my body's response is pain at first. And I have to be like, no, this is soreness. This is normal. This is manageable. I can figure this out. So that one really got me. That was really interesting. And I at first also, this has been the last frontier for me is when I have like my fingers kind of start to swell up and things like that, or not just my fingers, like if I have a joint that swells up, I for a long time was like, that's separate. That's physical. I can see that my joint is swelling.
Yeah.
And my PT was like, yes, that's true. But there's a point before that happens where your brain feels, especially if you're hypermobile, which, my God, I just want to tell everyone about hypermobility because I think, especially after pregnancy, like your joints are more lax. Like you literally are given a hormone. Your body produces something called relaxin in pregnancy that loosens everything up before you give birth. So yeah, I think for a while I had categorized that as something different, where actually what my brain needs to feel sometimes, again, this is why I can't stretch as much, is I can stop, like even if a joint feels like it's going to swell up, now I'm like, oh, my body feels unstable. I am going to do a activation exercise. And even just like I do this exercise with my head where I press my hand into the side of my head and I press into it to stabilize. And it kind of gives my body this feedback of like, you're stable. Ooh. There are muscles there that will help. Or if my hips are hurting, I will like do a similar thing with like the inside of my knee to kind of be like, you're stable. I have to like suck my joints into the joint.
Yeah, like kind of like
it's so weird. No, but it makes such a big difference. And again, it is part of that it's just fascinating when you understand more of the pain research of your body is just taking its best guess based on your circumstances and what's going on. And I really loved it when I was able to connect that with emotions. Another one is stress linked. If your pain gets worse during periods of emotional stress, people who have an origin without injury, like there's not a clear physical cause or trauma. Delayed reaction. This was a good one that helped me when your symptoms flare up hours or a day after physical activity rather than the activity itself. Ooh. So I would like go to Pilates and hours later, a day later, I would be like, oh my God, I messed myself up. I must have done something in Pilates. That's the only thing I did differently. But it's like, no, if I had injured myself, I would have felt it when I was doing it. That made a really big difference for me. And then you can have, if you have a variety of sensations like burning, tingling, numbness, tightness across multiple parts of the body. And the most common neuroplastic pain is like chronic neck and back pain, which was really helpful. And another big tell for me was when meds stopped working. Like I was taking a lot of ibuprofen, and at some point it like I thought I was going to get a stomach ulcer. So I stopped and I was like, the pain is the same whether I've taken ibuprofen or not. Clearly this is not responding to inflammation, right? Like, so those were some things that helped me in case anyone was curious.
It's fascinating.
It is, right? Especially when you link it up with emotions and stuff like that. So I'm not like all, better, but even though this was, I honestly feel like the past 4 years was so dramatic and intense. And I also moved across the country and had a lot of change happen in my life personally. So it was insane, but I do feel like it made me learn myself a lot. And I feel very grateful actually too I think I used to work out a lot to try to be like, I need to work out. I need to look good. I really had to develop other coping skills also because I was so dependent on working out. And I didn't have a problem with it because I could always kind of do something every day, but I really had to learn what other coping skills were without that. And I also feel like I'm very conscious now of like, I actually care about having good form and I don't care about just like looking good while I'm working out, or being impressive. I care so much about technique. And as I just turned 36 and am officially in my late 30s, I've been like, okay, I also have to do these things because I want to not be in chronic pain when I'm older. Like I actually have to care about like building and maintaining muscle and bone density. So while it's hard to say I'm grateful this happened, there are things that I'm taking from it that I feel like will help me hopefully as I get older. So
muscle
that's
is
my
key
story
for longevity. Truly.
Yeah, I know.
Like, and to make that shift of like, oh, I do it to be like lithe and toned. It's like, no, it's literally, it's like directly connected to your health.
Yeah.
for women as they age. Like muscle protects your bone density.
Yep.
Which protects your balance, which protects your mobility, which protects you from falls, which like the biggest thing I learned in the emergency room is you don't want to fall.
Yeah.
You don't want to fall. Don't fall. Whatever you do not fall. You're fucked. If you fall after a certain age, it's over. Like it was.
Why is that?
Horrible.
Why can't people fall and be older and be fine?
So it really depends on how you've cared for yourself.
Yeah.
Because the problem is the older you get, if you already have chronic comorbidities in conjunction with the injury that you sustain to the fall, it makes it much more complicated to recover. And the recovery process is longer and more painful. And the other thing is you lose the ability to get back to the place that you were prior to the injury. So right now, you and I, God forbid something happens, we can do PT, we can do rehab, and more likely than not, short of like a spinal injury, right?
Yeah.
We could get back to a place that we were at in terms of use of the joint, the limb, the whatever, as before the injury.
Yeah.
And as you get older, you lose the capacity to get back where you were. So if you fall at 85 and break your hip, you already, like at a baseline, you don't really have the strength to go do like full rehab.
Yeah.
So it's a whole thing. So go lift weights, ladies.
Yeah, we need to go lift weights and eat fiber in addition to protein.
Eat fiber. Yeah, you don't just need protein.
People are crazy.
Crazy.
Don't go get Mel Robbins protein shots. Guys.
No, please, for the love of God, don't drink her, what is it called? Genius shots or something like that. I'm like, leave me alone.
Leave me alone. And if you want to hear us rant about Mel Robbins, we have an episode about the Let Them theory that's on the podcast, or we did one about the protein stuff on Substack if you want to join us over there. Yeah. So I hope you got something out of this if you listened.
Yeah. We appreciate you. This is a two-parter. Yeah. So if you're okay with some birth trauma stuff and some descriptions of physical stuff, go listen to part 1 again. You know, if you want more content, join us over on Substack, nuanceneeded.substack.com. And anything you can do to rate, review, share, subscribe means the world to us. If you could share this episode with somebody that you know, like if you think it could be helpful for somebody, that's all we want. We just are trying to put out content that makes you feel better about things.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.